The number one reason why most dietary approaches fail to work isn't that they don't work, it's that they don't work in practical real life circumstances. We want a dietary strategy that works when you're tired, exhausted, and hangry at 2 a.m. and the only source of food you have is the local Waffle House. And that literally is what happened to me several years ago, and I walked out of that Waffle House going, you know what? This dietary strategy is great because I could even apply it here and now, and it still worked. I call it my 3P strategy, and I've mentioned this many times in my videos, my podcasts, my books and stuff about a good, simple framework to help you guide each meal, because if you have healthy meals, your diet will take care of itself. And here's how it works. So P number 1 stands for protein. Every time you sit down to a meal, you're looking down, and it should be pretty obvious, where is my protein source? Doesn't have to be of a animal-based, or it can be plant-based, or whatever you want, but you should be able to look at your meal and say, I've got a decent protein source here. Your second P is plant. That brings up the nutritional value of the food relative to the amount of calories, fiber, a lot of antioxidants, and a whole bunch of other qualities that you typically are not going to have if you completely omit any sort of plant-based foods from your diet. And then the third P is the one that makes it all come together, and this is portion. This goes for the portion of everything that you're eating, so the portion of your protein and your plant-based sources, plus the portions for everything else, your grains and anything else that doesn't fall into those categories. This strategy isn't saying you need to eat only plants and protein sources, but it also reflects on the entire meal as a whole. Eating enough to satisfy, but not so much that you're overeating. So that way, if you have a decent protein and a decent plant-based source, and the meal as a whole is not so big that you're gonna be overfeeding yourself, chances are whatever else is in there isn't going to be really any detrimental to you, as long as it's kind of all kept in check by being mindful of the protein, plant, and portion size of everything else. So it takes a little bit of practice, but it doesn't take a whole lot of work to be mindful of those 3 Ps at each meal. You don't have to count anything, use any apps, you don't have to weigh anything and stuff. You just have to sit down to each meal and be mindful of your 3 Ps. And then be reflective of your goals and objectives. And this is pretty self-evident stuff. Is I want to gain weight. Okay, eating more than what you normally have. And the same thing goes for portion for weight loss. If you're normally having a foot-long sandwich and you go down to a 6-inch, or just less of what you normally have for lunch, that's all it needs to be. You don't need to know the actual numbers, though they can be helpful. You just need to know this is less than I normally do in order to get the scale moving in the direction you want it to. But by and large, the 3P strategy works because it can work in almost any sort of circumstances with minimal amount of effort. You can apply it to any sort of diet strategy you like too. Paleo, vegan, raw food, any of these approaches that you like to have, but they're not something you have to do. So it's kind of almost a stealth dietary approach that's relatively easy to apply in almost any circumstances on a daily basis. A lot of people feel like this is great. I don't need to be on a lifestyle or an all-consuming identity that's a high-maintenance approach to just eating well. So it can be something you can easily stick to, modify, and adjust to whatever you need to work best for you. So if you want to learn more, check out my book, Micro Workouts, which goes into this a little bit more in detail, and thoughts and comments down below. Be fit, live free.